Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Coach Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. The recitation for the day is Sri Rag Mahalla Pehla. Sunman Bhule Bavare, Gur Ki Charani Lag. Har jap naam te aaye tu, jam dar pੈ dukh bhag. Dukh gano duhagni kyun thir rahe suhag. Pai re अवर नाही मैं थाऊं, मैं धन नाम निदान है, गुरे दिया बल जाओ रहाओ। गुरमति पत साबास तिस, तिस कै संग मिलाओ, जिस बिन घड़ी न जीवो, तिस बिन घड़ी न जीवाओ, बिन नामे मर जास। मैं औंधले नाम न विसरै, टेक टिकी कर जाओ। गुरु जिना का अंधला, चेले नाही ठाओ। बिन सतगुर नाम न पाइए, बिन नावे क्या सुआओ। आए गया पछतावना, ज्यों सुंझे कर काओ। बिन नावे दुख देहुरी, ज्यों कल्लर की पीत। तब लग महल न पाइए, जब लग साच न चीत। सबदे रप्पे घर पाइए, निर्बाणी पद नीत। हाँ गुर पूछो आपने, गुर पूछ कार कमाओ। शब्द सलाही मन वसै, हਉ में दुख जल जाओ। सहजे होए मिलावड़ा, साचे साच मिलाओ। शब्द रत्ते से निर्मले, तजे काम क्रोध अहंकार। नाम सलाहन सद सदा, हर राखै उरधार। सो क्यों मनो विसारिय, सब जिया का आधार। शब्द मरे सो मर रहे, फिर मरे न दूजी वार। शब्द ही ते पाइए, हर नामे लगे प्यार। बिन शब्द जग भूला फिरै, मर जन्मे वारो वार। सब सलाहे आपको, वडो वडेरी होए। गुर बिन आप न चीनिए, कहो सुने क्या होए। नानक शब्द पछाणिए, हਉ मैं करे न कोय। In this passage, the mind is being addressed as lost and crazy, like a buzzing around, like a crazy bee. Sun man bhule bavare. Bavare is the interesting word here. It signifies the human condition. And the human condition has been likened in this passage to that of a separated wife, suffering the pangs of separation and seeking a union. Dukh gano tuhagni, kyun kar rahe suhag. Tuhagni is the separated wife, separated because of her own doings, and is now seeking a union, a reunion desperately. So the message here is, if you want to reunite with the husband's self, then pay heed. Seek the guidance of Guru wisdom. Gur ki charani lag. So now we know that the mind as a bride and the self as the husband is a very familiar theme in Gurbani. And the framing of its message in a feminine voice may suggest one of several things. It may be a way to break the patriarchal mindset of society then and even today, or it may suggest the greater receptivity and nurturing emotion of the feminine. The female womb is what makes birth possible. So it wouldn't be unreasonable to assume that in the union of the mind with its husband's self, it is largely dependent on the receptivity and the action of the mind. Now, because the mind bride has, quote-unquote, forgotten, vismaran, the husband's self, it is first necessary to remember, or more appropriately, to recall the husband. Recollection involves knowledge. Naam. Har jap naam te aaye tu. Bring into your attention, draw into your attention that knowledge that is lying latent in you. Without that knowledge, the pain of separation will only eat into your body and mind bin naame dukh dehuri jo kallar ki peet, like a wall of gravel that is constantly crumbling. Now, the Gur, or the Satgur, we know, the true enlightener, so translated, is the real repository of this knowledge within. There is no other. So the call is, my brethren, where else can I look except to Gur wisdom? Bhaire avar nahi main thao. And this Gur wisdom has given us the treasured knowledge or awareness of my husband self, of my mool, so to speak, my root. And so to this Gur wisdom, Guruji says, we should remain beholden. Main tan naam nidan hai, Gur diya, and then bal jao. Beholden to that Guru who diya, gave this treasure trove of naam and nidan. Now there is a word of caution. Watch out for false ideologies and false gurus who lack the proper insight, because philosophies and systems that lack that insight can lead you down a rabbit hole. It's like the blind leading the blind. Guru jina ka andla chele nahi thao. So we have to ask, what is that proper insight? And that insight is very simple. All of Gurbani stresses the fact that the Creator resides in you as yourself, as your source. And it is to this Creator within that your mental and psychological movement must occur. Now, you have to recall that a lot of the practice in India then and now is external. So that's the insight that we must always bear in mind. So if we adhere to philosophies that don't have this insight, will only lead us to disappointment. And there's a wonderful example of a crow that lands on a deserted home, expecting people in the house to give it a crumb or two to eat, but nothing happens. And so it flies off, disappointed. In other words, without achieving what it had come to that house for. So, aaye pashtavana jo sunje kar kao. So that would be the situation of following false gurus and ideologies. So it's very important that you have the discrimination to follow the right path. And that is the path of the true enlightener, the Gur or the Satgur. So adopt then the honored teachings of the enlightener. Gurmat pat sabastis, tiske sanga milo. Sabastis is honoring this honored teaching. And for the spiritually blind mind, which is the bride that is separated, and who is seeking the way home, good wisdom is like a staff that guides the blind. And once it gets you home, it'll never go astray. Main andale naam na visare, take tiki kar jao. So take tiki is that support. The mind is blind, it needs the staff. The staff is, figuratively speaking, Guru wisdom. And the message and the discourse of the enlightener, the sabad, the word, has transforming capabilities. What does it do? It soothes or extinguishes the painful burn of the ego self that we all feel, the anxieties, the inner contradictions, the desires, the addictions, the neurosis. Shabad Salahi Manavase, then what happens? Haume dukh jal jao. It just extinguishes that fire. And the mind is freed then from the corrupting influence of sensual indulgence, of anger, of pride. Sabad-a-day, Once the message is internalized, say nirmale, you become stain-free. In other words, the mind is freed from the corruption. Taj, kam, krodh, ahankar. These are corrupting influences in that they blind you to reality, or they blind you to right action. So by absorbing the discourse of the true enlightener, the sabad, the mind finds its transcendental state, nirvani. And that state is one of union with the self within. Sabad-a-day karpaya, within. Nirbani patneet, that state of transcendence. And such a state arises spontaneously. Sahje hoye milavada, sache sach milao. The condition being, if you truthfully follow the instruction and the message of the enlightener in the Sabad. So in conclusion, Guruji says, Nanak Shabad Pashaniye, how me kahe na koi, kare na koi. Recognize the self through the testimony of the enlightener, and never again fall prey to your false self, which is the ego. With those thoughts, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.